Now, who are these people that are in charge? Where do they come from? What are their backgrounds, and what type of people are they? Almost all the people that are in charge are former exiles. Now, I essentially grew up in exile. My father was prominent in the exile community, and I grew up with a lot of these people, principally in London. So I spent the first 10 years of my life here in New York, not far from here, actually. And then we moved to London when I was 10, where I continued living for a while. And in London, as you know, there's a very large exiled, or at the time, exiled Iraq community. And many of the exiled political parties are based in London. So I saw these people for a long period of time. I grew up with them, and I helped a lot of them as I started going to law school. I helped them process their situations in London and so on and so forth. I'm very familiar with the community, and my father is as well. And then when a lot of them moved back to Iraq at the time, in 2003, we saw a lot of these people go back and do whatever it is that they did as well. So what type of background do these people have? What type of experience do they have, et cetera, et cetera? So I can give you a summary. I won't go into the details of names and that type of thing, because it wouldn't be appropriate. But the summary is that the former exiles in London and other countries that they were based in essentially spent their time doing nothing, okay? Unemployed or underemployed, living off the state, off employment benefits and that type of thing, and not being allowed to work, because as an exile, you're not supposed to be working. You're not supposed to be fully employed doing, being a doctor or an engineer or that type of thing. So they spend their time in London, this being political party hacks, okay? And what that meant essentially is that level of activity was close to zero. You would just go to the various meetings. You wouldn't really do anything apart from helping new exiles arrive from Iraq, and that's it, okay? If you were a doctor back in Iraq, you would not be a doctor in exile. If you were an engineer, you would not be one in exile, et cetera, okay? So you spend a lot of time, decades even, doing nothing. And a primary example of this is the prime minister. So Al-Maliki left Iraq when he was still a young man, without a university degree, moved to Iran, where he lived for 10 years in a military camp, not doing much, 10 years of lack of achievement, and then moved to Syria, where he lived for 10 years, where all he was doing was being involved in political party affairs, meaning going to the meetings and helping new arrivals and that type of thing. That's it, okay? So, and then goes back to Iraq, and then suddenly is prime minister, okay? So never having worked for the state in an official capacity and not really having any professional training at all. That's one of the qualities that they had. Another quality that they have is that when you live in exile from an Arab country, particularly from Iraq under Saddam Hussein, you really live a very difficult existence in the sense that anyone could be mukhabarat, anyone could be secret police, right? So any of the people that you meet when you're in London or Syria or Iran could be representatives of the secret police, of Saddam Hussein's secret police. And that's a very terrifying experience because the secret police were very pervasive. They were everywhere, and they would really terrify people. So what that meant is that you always had to be extremely cautious of anyone that you met. Okay. So as an Iraqi, if you're living in Baghdad and you grow up in Baghdad, Baghdad is a very diverse place. So historically, it was a very rich culture, as you probably know. It's very, very diverse from a religious, ethnic, linguistic perspective. There are lots of languages in the city, et cetera, et cetera. But when you live in exile, that changes suddenly, right? Because when you're living in exile and you're in political party exile, then the only people who you can really, really trust are the people in your political party. Okay? And even those people you may not trust completely either. So suddenly, if you're in an ethno-sectarian political party where your political party represents a particular religious affiliation, suddenly the only people who you know and your only friends are people who are from your religion and people from your race. That's it. You don't really know anyone else. You might meet them from time to time, but when you do meet them, you're extremely cautious, right? And you definitely don't open up and reveal yourself and set yourself at ease, et cetera, et cetera. So growing up in exile or developing in exile is a completely different experience to developing and growing up or training in Iraq. Because when you're in Iraq, it's a very diverse environment, but in exile, it's absolutely not. And that's one of the reasons why you may have noticed this. I don't know if you have. But exiled Iraqi communities tend to be very extreme in terms of their visions of ethno-sectarian relations for Iraq. But when you go back to Iraq, you'll find that the same members of those same ethno-sectarian groups tend to be very relaxed. So I'll give you a specific example is Kurdish groups in London tend to be very extreme when you ask them about independence. Yes, and what is your vision for independence for Kurdistan? They'll all say, everyone, without exception, say Kurdistan should be independent immediately. But when you go back to Iraq, it's very nuanced. Around 50% of the Kurdish population, according to 10 years of polling data, say that they want to be independent. Around 50%, okay? And the rest of the population says, well, we're fine, we're doing okay, you know, there's no real reason for it, you know. And anyway, this is the way everything's always been, and we get along fine with our fellow Iraqis, so we don't really need it.